Good morning, guys. Nice to see you. My mind's a little distracted. You see this Minnesota news this morning?
Yeah, that's what we just led into. It's Glenn Taylor putting putting out a statement basically not so fast on the whole Alex Rodriguez thing. This thing was all but wrapped up, but Timberwolves PR, I won't read the whole release, but I'll give you what I have here. I'll give you the top line. Glenn Taylor confirmed the expiration of the option of Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez acquiring the T-Wolves and the Minnesota Lynx. It was supposed to occur within 90 days following the notice issued that expired yesterday. Now, he does say, I'll continue to work with Mark, Alex, and the rest of the group to ensure the teams have the resources to compete at the highest levels. But here's the hammer. The Timberwolves and Lynx are no longer for sale. Woo!
Your thoughts, Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and Chris Finch in the middle of a historic Timberwolves season, and you look up and you're worried that the lights might go off. Yeah, it's not good, man. I mean, like you, a lot of people thought that this deal was unofficially done. I think we are kind of guilty at times of just, forgetting how massive these transactions are. But yeah, and I wish I don't have fresh intel or reporting on it. I just know that, Glenn Taylor, I don't know his exact age. He's a very old man at this point. He had been pretty stubborn to sell the team. This was a good opportunity, and it seemed like everything was going really well. Obviously, that's not the case. So that's tough from a basketball standpoint. You got a franchise that hasn't won a first round playoff series in 20 years, and has got a good thing going. This is a hell of a distraction.
Yeah, and Sam, I know obviously this is totally in its infancy, and you said you don't have a lot of intel on it, so I'm maybe asking you an unfair question, but generally when a team goes for sale, it also elevates everything, right? The lowest level team, all the valuations go up. It's good for the league. Money, just more money's coming in. So not only what impact on the T-Wolves, but any kind of impact, I guess, league wide on this.
I don't know. I mean, like you said, Jay, I do admittedly hate, reacting in real time where I haven't even picked up a call. I know that I never heard anything negative about the transition process. I'm close with our guy in Minnesota, John Krasinski, who does a very good job covering that team. And honestly,
the office too.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. Yes. And, never heard any rumblings about things going awry. I think about the ripple effect of that transaction and how, like, even in our world, like they, I don't want to put anybody's business in the streets, but like they had high-ranking members of the media relations staff, for example, that you got the sense that like they came to Minnesota from other teams thinking like, oh, okay, this is an exciting new era. And like, these are actual people who thought they were joining something that was on the rise, instead of, this creates a real problematic thing because you have an owner who was clearly A, willing to sell, B, money-wise, I don't know where he's at. I mean, today's NBA ownership experience is wildly expensive. So I don't know what Glenn's books look like. And the fact that he has to say that we'll continue to make sure the team has resources, is like me telling my wife, like, no, we can probably pay the electric bill,
Probably.
Yeah. Well, look, I will avoid the urge to get incredibly nerdy on this, and we'll get to the Kings in a second, just for those who are saying we're being nerdy. But Sam, a couple of things fascinate me about this. And again, we're reacting in real time. Number one, it was just reported a few days ago. I remember it caught my eye that Rodriguez and his partner had tapped Dial Capital as the funding to finish this payment. And why did that perk my ears up? Because Dial Capital is a minority owner of the Sacramento Kings. They were one of the first places that the NBA approved these equity firms to take smaller stakes in teams. And that's when you saw a lot of Kings minority owners sell a couple of years ago. Dial Capital was the one that funded that in. I think they have with the Timberwolves, it would have been 5 teams they have pieces of. They're limited by the NBA. They divested their shares in the Suns when the Suns were sold. So something had to happen on the Dial Capital end. Either that fell through or they didn't like it. We'll find that out. Secondly, I am not a rich man like these people, so I understand how it sounds with me grading their moves. But I have logic behind what I'm about to say. This is like, to me, the dumbest time to sell an NBA team you could possibly be into for 2 main reasons. Number one, MLS, NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, they're all locked into long-term deals for television. And what we've seen and what has been proven is that live sports is the highest commodity when it comes to advertisers, because you're not DVRing, you're not fast forwarding, you're watching these spots in real time, both during breaks and during games. There's a ton of money. The NBA is about to sign their big deal, their big TV deal, which is going to be a massive, massive windfall to the owners of these teams. Secondly, that will, as you know, clear the way for expansion, which is almost certainly going to be Seattle and Las Vegas. That's $5 billion they've said, they've floated out there per expansion team. That's $10 billion divided through 30 teams, not to mention team valuations then skyrocketing with the all ships rise types of thing. I have no idea why an owner would choose now to sell a team when he or she could wait 2 or 3 years and truly realize somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion extra in revenue. So I understand maybe why Glenn Taylor became reticent on selling. I don't know if that's the deal or not, and I just got nerdy about everything, but it does seem weird.
Yeah, you are a nerd, man. What the
I
hell?
am kind of an, I know, I know.
You just made me pick the phone up and Google Glenn Taylor age. He's 82 years old. He doesn't have a few years to wait. He also, you know, has lived a long life, been successful. These are the thoughts of a much younger entrepreneur like yourself, Dave. You're clearly on your way to getting into NBA ownership. I also think about because admittedly, as you know, it's like the main crux of my job is diving in on the basketball and the team. So my disclaimer is I am not a sports business reporter. I have a good understanding of the way it works. But when somebody like Mark Cuban sells the Mavs when he did, or his portion of them, and his logic, agree or disagree, some people thought he was, you know, framing it in a curious way. You know, he painted a picture of this being, you know, near the peak for the NBA, and that he was concerned about a bit of a downturn when it comes to the next deal. That this deal was going to be great, but then after this deal, when you have, you know, potentially the fragmenting of the rights among multiple streaming partners, and really just kind of a confusing landscape in terms of content and the customer and consumption and the best way to package all this stuff. You know, he got out when you know the getting was good, and that's the way he kind of framed it. So that, to me, combined with, I think the Glenn Taylor age thing is, you know, that's the biggest thing. He thought it was going to be a wrap for him. He was going to have courtside seats and enjoy this Timberwolves team. And then on the basketball side, you know, the success is wonderful for them, but they were also faced with a really challenging offseason where their luxury tax bill, you know, if they don't trade Karl Anthony Towns, was going to be up in the neighborhood of the Warriors, just, you know, tops in the league. Some big time bills to pay. And now the question obviously is who's going to pay them.
And Jason, just before I turn it to you, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting, Glenn Taylor says the window for Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez to purchase expired. That we knew. And quote, the buyer could have been entitled to a limited extension. However, those circumstances did not occur. So this thing keeps unraveling. Stay tuned, and we'll have all that for you.
Yeah. So Sam, Dave mentioned the Kings. Let's talk about them a little bit here. I would say in just the last 2 days, things were kind of going better for the Kings. They were back into 6th. They lose and get blown out by Dallas. And then last night, basically every combination of game went wrong for the Sacramento Kings. Now, still 10 games to go. Lots of things can shift, but you know, we like to check in with you on, your thought on where the Kings are now and where you think they might be when this is all wrapped up.
Yeah, interesting week. This whole Dallas twofer is kind of fun to track. I'm writing a little bit about the Mavs for tomorrow in the context of the West playoff race. One thing, this doesn't make Kings fans feel any better, but I've been telling people this week about that last game that is, for me, pretty unique, is that I feel like it's the first time all year with this team that my takeaway was, oh, no, I think you're allowed to say this word on your station. They just got their ass kicked. Like, That's it. Like, that's it. It's not, why didn't they show up against Charlotte or Detroit or whatever? You watch that game and they tried. I mean, they tried. The first half, the offense was actually okay. But you could see the struggle. You could see, Domas down in the paint, doing his shimmy like he does, and just he's on the doorstep of finishing and is not able to in ways that we're not used to seeing. Gafford's size, Derek Lively, the second size, a lot of guys on that team, they have length. And what I'm kind of writing about is, and this is, I guess, to maybe lessen the sting for Kings fans, is like, if you didn't know and you just looked at the standings and said, oh, the Mavs are somewhat in the middle of the pack, just like the Kings, since, make sure I have this right, March 1st, I think it is, in this stretch where they've won 9 out of 10 games, they have the second best defense in basketball. That's with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in your backcourt, or, running the team. And so I'm shocked that their defense is really good. I talked to Jason Kidd the other night about it. And one thing he shared that was pretty fascinating was that, the officiating, as everybody knows, has changed in the second half of the season. And Jason is on the competition committee for the league. And he was essentially saying that, once he started hearing whispers that a shift was coming, he talked to his team about how it's time to get tough, and it's time to realize that if you're willing to, you're about to be able to guard, and to really guard and to get up into guys, and you're not going to get the ticky-tack fouls. And then the inverse of that is telling a guy like Luka, big fella, we need you. We love you. You're about to get whooped on pretty good by opposing defenses. So you got to be tough. And the other night they did that, and they hit shots. But I thought their defense was the biggest thing.
Sam Amick with us from The Athletic. You said something there, and you're 100% right. And you've really seen it flourish with a team like the Knicks, who, by the way, also put up almost 150 points last night, which is incredibly scary. But Sam, do you have any color on, you mentioned the officiating's change and a lot of these fouls aren't being called. And I guess my question is, why? What are we doing? Did it just arbitrarily change? Was there an alarm clock that went off? Was there a memo sent out? Did Adam Silver just say, yeah, you know what, I'm tired of this. Why would you change things in the middle of the year, which is going to help some teams, but let's be honest, it's going to adversely hurt other teams?
Well, I mean, full disclosure, I love it. I know everybody.
I do too. I
love it. I feel like they're getting back to the game a little bit. But I have my informed opinion, and I'll say a couple things. For one, I cover All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis. That game was a disaster. Obviously, 200 plus points between, whatever the final score was. It was an abomination when it comes to the game. Well, I go in to do post-game media, and Jalen Brunson is doing a little group session, right? And he, like, very in an unaware kind of way and not reading the room, like, innocently tells a story about how at halftime of the All-Star game, the guys in the East locker room looked at the score and said, hey, we could probably get to 200. Let's try to get there. Instead of, God forbid, like, let's go get a couple stops and not give up 180 or whatever it was. And between that and Anthony Edwards saying, we're not even trying, I heard a lot of stuff that night about how upset Adam Silver was. So to me, that's a flashpoint that was kind of the final straw for Adam in the league, where a conversation, because it represented what was happening during the regular season. And it was just symbolic of that. They then, had points of emphasis given to all of the refs that, that kind of led to the shift in officiating. And I mean that, I don't know. Is it problematic to do it midseason? Yes. But you're talking about some of the numbers that were coming out of that first half and really these past couple of years, they were changing really the history of the game. You had all of a sudden 50-point games were no big deal. So yeah, it's been an abrupt shift and it has made for an interesting turn here in the season. But to me, that's the root of it.
I bet, as an offshoot, GMs may not love it because they could have said, well, look, I kind of made my team to fit these rules, and maybe somebody have the more physical players / teams, but it seems really odd. I mean, I think the end result is better for the game, but it's weird to do it in season as opposed to say, all right, next season, these are points of emphasis. We got to make this more palatable.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's all fair. And even to go deeper in the weeds, guys, at our place, we've been asking a lot of questions about the frustration with the officials relating to the first half of the season. And we had been doing a fair amount of digging on, like, are we going to do some coverage, talking about why GMs and coaches and players are so upset about the officiating this year. And I think that was a factor too, because, and I'm maybe giving the media too much credit, but I am a believer that, when the scrutiny comes and the pressure comes, and it comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes it comes in the form of reporters asking a lot of questions and augmenting the viewpoints of people who are not happy. And I think the league looked, felt all of that, saw all of that, didn't like the commentary relating to the state of the game, and decided to do something about it. Again, right now in the moment, I'm guilty of being stuck in the, I don't really care how they got here. I kind of love it, even if it means, admittedly, that like some of the stories we were going to tell, maybe we're now telling a different story that's not as salacious or not. I mean, the anger level has gone down. As a quick side story, we're doing our anonymous player poll, which I think I've mentioned to you guys. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions is, what grade do you give the officials this season? And it's like, in the couple of weeks that we've been gathering answers, I've noted, like, now I've gotten a couple guys that were like, well, I was going to give them a C, but I guess now a B, like answers are changing because of the way things are being called.
Interesting. Because we were, and I know James Harden's an exception, but we were commenting last week that I don't know if he's the only one ever, but when you consider how many points he scored, how much offense he's put out there, and you know how I feel about James.
Big fan.
He has more free throws made than field goals made in his career. And you hear some of those rumblings, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a few others, where it's like, they're free throw merchants. Joel Embiid's gotten that tack too. And I agree with you, dude. Like, and I think we all three agree. We want to see defense back in the game. Not 1988 Knicks and Hornets defense, but we want to see defense back. The shift in the middle of the season, not to just bury the point here and grind it, but the shift in the middle of the season is a little interesting, a pissed off Adam Silver, if you will. But now all of a sudden, you've got teams, we just mentioned them, a team like the Knicks now all of a sudden, it's like they got jet skis, man. Like that Tom Thibodeau's got these guys playing well, and they look like they can beat anybody in the league. And these types of shifts in officiating are going to highly benefit teams like that.
They are. I mean, as you were painting that picture, Dave, I got an image in my mind of Domas, wiping blood off his face the other day. Mm-hmm. A guy like that is like, all right, hey, I'm not a big fan of this, because now a lot of this stuff doesn't draw the whistle. Right. Watching that Philly Clippers game last night, mm-hmm. down the stretch, it was a great game. And I'm forgetting, who did Kawhi block on the last shot? Was that Maxey? No, it was Kelly Oubre, I think.
Kelly Oubre.
And I kind of love the fact that there was a little bit of body contact, but it's a huge play. Let's not just give the game away. No call. Kawhi, wedges the ball right in the rim. And there were quite a few plays down that stretch where the Sixers were losing their minds, because if the whistle went the way that it did a couple months ago, they probably win the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a big shift. It's not anything like I've ever seen. and we'll see where it goes. But again, I do think it matters, and it's good for now because this season was losing credibility. Really the league was losing credibility. I think that people want balance. I think people want defense to matter. And, it's a little wonky because of the midseason thing, but, I hope they continue it going into next year.
And kind of ironic, Sam, that on the same thing we're talking about, the officials letting things go, it takes 4 minutes yesterday for Draymond to get 2 Ts and get ejected.
It's crazy.
I mean, and just the look like Steph had, like it was such a critical game that they still won to their credit, but it almost looked like, not again.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I watched the full clip this morning because I had seen somebody say Steph was crying.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man. And I thought, I'm sure it's social media. They're exaggerating. Well, no, he was crying. Like, we need a new word other than crying, because crying in sports denotes, well, of course it denotes Tom Hanks and Little League of Their Own. But this was just passion and intensity and frustration. So like those tears are different. This is being overwhelmed. This is being overburdened. And in a weird way, part of me loves it because it's like, I love the athletes where even though you're making $1 billion, you absolutely are invested and you care. And that's who Steph is. So to watch him after Draymond gets ejected, lean over, shake his head. You could tell, I think Steve Kerr pats him on the back, and we can all relate where it's that moment where you really don't want anybody to make it worse by touching you.
Yeah.
And Steve touches him. And next thing you know, he's got the jersey up on the face and he's wiping those eyes, man, like he was. Then when they win the game and he was huge in the last 30 seconds, I don't know if this even made the rounds on social media. I'm sure it did because people don't miss anything. But he walks over to the bench and absolutely kicks the hell out of a couple of chairs.
Yep.
And I mean, that to me, you might as well have said, God dang it, Draymond, like, dude, we can't do this anymore. So yeah, they're in it right now. They're trying to hold on. And last thing Steph wants is, let alone being in the play-in game, is to be sitting home watching playing basketball.
Well, and not to get all Sigmund Freud, and also we're talking about sports and not real life, but watching we talked about this earlier, Sam. Look, this isn't an excuse, nor did I feel bad for him, but in watching Draymond last night, it occurred to me really for the first time, and it reminded me of DeMarcus Cousins and what he had said before about his own temper. I'm watching Draymond and I go, you know what? I almost feel bad for him because he can't stop. He cannot stop, whether it's a family member that has some form of addiction or is a chronic liar or whatever it may be. He could not stop. I don't think he had the ability to shut his mouth and walk away. He had redlined. And in Steph's case, it's almost like that family member that you love that promised this was going to be the last time, that that had once again had disappointed you. And to kind of wrap everything up, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I apologize. And if this hasn't happened, whatever. Has anyone to your knowledge ever asked Steph, like in a deep kind of way, like, dude, have you ever confronted Draymond? Has there ever been private? Have you ever lost your mind on him? Because I got to wonder what that locker room was like after the game when they're one-on-one with each other.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about that at length, like what the conversations are like behind the scenes. And yes, the answer you get is that, yes, he's absolutely confronted him. The thing with Steph, and you could see it, it's kind of there for everyone to see on video last night, is that even Steph's I'm not saying he's never lost his mind on Draymond. I don't know. But like his version of addressing it in confrontation, he's just not wired that way. So like he has an opportunity when Draymond is sitting there chewing the ref's ear off to literally grab him by the jersey and push him physically away and say, stop.
Yeah.
But instead, it's one hand on the chest, mildly saying, like tapping him, saying, all right, that's enough. That's enough. And it wasn't enough. Like I'm trying to think of somebody who kind of just did it differently. Maybe even a Kings reference. I mean, like a Corliss Williamson back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to grab you by the jersey and say, no, like, here's a good one. Corliss played with Ron Artest and was the only guy that I ever came across who scared Ron Artest. You know what I mean? And I say scared lightly, but like he had the ability and the strength and the confidence to tell a guy like that, no, you're done. And we're going to not get kicked out of the game. He's just not wired that way. And he wants Draymond to do it, again, not to be corny, but out of love, because they have this brotherhood that goes back, for so long. But you could see it right there, man. He's exhausted by it. And this is the predicament for him, is that he knows, I know they're in 10th. I know that people get their shots in about how bad they are right now. But, in his mind, like, the only path to the type of success that he is used to and that he wants still includes Draymond Green. If you take that away, I think he's probably got a fear of the unknown on the other side. But then you see, what comes with that experience. And you're right about Draymond. I mean, listen, I know you alluded to the fact that the whistle came quick for Draymond where it's not coming quick for others. First of all, you can read his lips. You can't call the ref a B word with the A word after it.
Yeah.
And he knew, like, he didn't argue the ejection. He just headed straight for the exits.
Yep. He got his money's worth and he let his team down. And I'm sure they let him know that. Much more on that, I'm sure. Sam's got his article coming out about the Mavs to take a look at that as well with The Athletic, along with all their other coverage, I'm sure, of the Minnesota sales situation and so much more. Always a great conversation, brother. We're way late. Appreciate you. Say hi to the fam. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
You too. That's Sam Amick. We will take a quick break. When we come back, the guest cavalcade rolls on. Marcos Berton of the Sacramento Bee will join us to talk about his article today. He says Sacramento, the perfect place for the Oakland Athletics. We'll talk to him about that right after this.